The Play Absolutely podcast with Dr. Sue Jennings and Dr. Andy Hickson.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Play Absolutely podcast. Hi Sue, how you doing?
Hi, Andy. Good to be back. It seems quite a time since we talked again.
Yeah, well, we shouldn't give our secrets away, but seeing as you did, we did record a couple of the pods in advance. So we haven't done any recording for a couple of weeks. I've been away, of course, to Southeast Asia. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot is our experiences of living with the Temiars. And I recently just I went back there and had a little visit to the jungle. And I don't think we've shared with our viewers before any of the Temiar language. So I thought the word for play in Temiar is jehwa. Jehwa. So I don't think there is a word for podcast, so we could just say the Jehwa podcast, for example.
And they use that word quite a lot too, don't they?
They do, yes. Yeah, for many things. It's, life is playful, I think, when you're in the
And
jungle.
sometimes when they're having their singing and dancing and trancing, they'll sometimes emphasize that it's more Jehwa than not. You know, that it's much more a playful one and no one's going to go deeply into trance and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I wanted to mention is you, of course, to those that don't know, several Neuro Dramatic play programs. One is you do an online diploma, I believe, and also a face-to-face diploma. Yeah. And are you recruiting at the moment for the latest diploma?
Yes, we'll be doing a new intake very soon. And it's live but online. So it's actually
Live
active
but
online.
online. Okay. And what can people expect to if they attend your diploma? Like how long is it? How much does it cost,
So
and so
people
on?
take 6 modules to
Module.
complete the actual study. They have to do some assessments as well. But the live online 6 modules, each module is 6 hours. So they've
6
done a
hours.
total of 36 hours of study, plus there is some private practice of NDP with children or whoever they can find to play with.
Right.
I said, I draw the line at them kidnapping children in the park, but apart from that, if it's their cousins' children or their neighbours' children, initially, just to get some actual active play under their belts.
Okay, so as part of the course, they have to undertake like a program where they design something where they run some playful activities with a group of children,
and
is
then
it?
they write up a short report of why they chose to do it in that particular way, what the children's reactions were, and so on. But it's a very practical course. People make things. We make a sensory bag. We make a theatre in a box.
Theatre in a box.
I think people enjoy, rather than having to write lots of 5,000 word essays, of actually doing things and making things. And it's interesting. Some people say, "Oh, I've never made anything like this before." I get a huge sense of achievement when they make their puppet out of a wooden spoon and so on. So, yes, and of course the same version of that they can do as a self-guide course. So we've pre-recorded it as well. Because some people can't always give up the time live. You know, they work different shifts or weekends, they have families. So they can also do the self-guide course, as we call it, in their own time. But it's the same course.
Right. How do people sign up?
Just look at the website.
Which website is that?
www.ndpltd.org.
ndplimited.org.
Of course, there's an application form to fill in, and we always let people know very quickly.
Do they get a qualification at the end of it?
At the end of that course, when they've done their satisfactory assessments, they get then a diploma in NDP, which allows them to practice NDP.
Okay. So moving on, since we last spoke, what's your favourite bit of playful activity that you've done?
What, since last time?
Yeah.
I've been looking at cutting out things
All
and
right.
realizing that small children develop that skill of actually being able to use scissors and cut round something
Mm-hmm.
very early on. And I realized it actually is quite an important skill to learn, to be able to cut something out and then the next step of sticking it on something. And that whole thing about creating collage work and so on. So repeating some of the skills of childhood just to remind myself how complex they might be.
Now, did you remind yourself when you were undertaking our activities is something I can never really work out, is when you're cutting something out, normally if you're right-handed, you use your right hand, of course. But if you try and swap over to your left hand, why is it almost practically impossible to cut things
It's
out in a
so
decent...
difficult.
Why? Do you need to get like left-handed scissors or something? Is there such a thing?
Well, yes, you can get left-handed scissors, but I think they're highly specialist. The same as they've only relatively recently, I think, made left-handed tennis rackets, for example.
That's a joke, right? Like the
So,
left-handed screwdriver.
but there are a lot of things you need to be left-handed.
Like a left hand.
And people that have got a strong left hand, say in a game of tennis, have got an advantage over their opponents too. Because you never quite know where the ball is coming from when it's coming from a left-hander rather than a right-hander. Some people, of course, are equal on both sides, which is very useful.
Extras, it's called, isn't it? Okay, well, we have someone rather special that's visiting us today in the waiting room at the moment. And I would like to welcome a good personal friend of mine. He is a special man. His name is Emmanuel. He is also known as Captain Awesome. He's a content creator and a technology enthusiast, best known for founding the Geekception. I think he calls it. It's Geekception is a tech-focused YouTube channel, an online media project. Manuel grew up in a village of Liana Logobo. I probably pronounced that terribly, in Nigeria. And he later moved to Malaysia, where he developed his passion for tech content creation. He has a playful and creative approach to tech videos and commentary, where he explores mobile tech, gadget reviews, comparisons, unboxings, and tactics through Geekception, building a community around thoughtful, engaging tech content, rather than just chasing trends or views. So, Emmanuel, thank you for joining us today. We better let him into the studio, I suppose. Where is he? Is that...
Hello.
There we go. Is he there? Hey, there you go.
Hey,
Yeah.
hello.
And welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I have got a question to start you off. So you do a lot of sort of product unboxings and tech reviews and so on. So if to sort of think of, rather than thinking of that as what you work with as a product, but as a playground, what's the one rule that you would break first? And what would you want people to learn by playing with it?
I think for me, it's a wonderful question. I think for me, most importantly, it's always about curiosity, right? I think I always like lead with curiosity in that even before I receive a product or even before I go out and get a product, the one thing that is always on my mind, I think like it's non-negotiable, is always like, am I curious about this thing? Is this something that I'm curious about, right? And if I'm curious about it and then I then experience the product or experience, like sometimes it's services, it's a subscription or whatever it is, and then I put myself in the shoes of whoever is going to be watching me, right? And I think one of the reasons why I started my YouTube channel, and in fact, some of the reasons I am even in the media space in the first place, is not even because I want to be a YouTuber or I want to be a content creator. It's because it's just a side effect of the things that I'm just naturally curious about, right? And I think many people, even today, I was looking at my Facebook memories and I got like a memory from 15 years ago where I was installing a software on a Samsung, the first original Samsung Galaxy S, which is like the first in their lineup. Now it's up to S25 now, so it's been quite a bit of releases since then. And I remember even then, what I was obsessed with was also just like, learning stuff and putting it out there. And I think as a result of just putting a lot of stuff out there, suddenly you become like a public figure, and people think, and people come up to me and ask me, how are you able to, keep doing the YouTube you're doing? How are you able to keep doing the content creation you're doing all of this while? And I just tell them the same thing, that I am not a content creator. I literally just like do stuff and then I play a lot with stuff. So sometimes what people don't see is that for me, sometimes to just make one video, I have sunk in hundreds of hours in different, I would say, activities that people will never get to see, just to be able to understand it as a whole. And then when they see that one video, they think, oh, it's just one video. It's like, and I make really long form videos, right? So I remember one of the videos I made was about this. It's like a gaming handheld console from Lenovo. And I was so intrigued about it. I bought it myself. I made the video. It was a 48-minute video, and lots of people watched it to the end. And the same feedback I got was exactly how I feel, which is like, oh my God, it answered all the questions, because I have those questions myself. So I tend to just lead with curiosity. What do I want to know? And then I just make a video about that. So I would say for me, it's always curiosity.
So would you say that curiosity leads play, or play leads curiosity?
They are brothers in arms, I would say, right? So when you are very playful, I think the act of play itself is one that demands for you to be curious, right? There is no KPIs for play, there is no outcomes for play, and there is no failing at play, right? Like you just you just play, right? Like wherever it leads you, you kind of go with the flow, and there is not this overarching expectations of what should be and how it should be, right? In the form it takes or in the medium it takes. It just is, right? And I think that's one of the things I love about just the intertwining nature of play and curiosity, where when you're curious, you start asking yourself questions like, hey, what if I try this approach? Hey, what if I tried that? What if I try, oh, it didn't work out? Okay, then you try something else. There's nothing that is really life ending, right? Like, oh, if this doesn't work out, then the world is going to end, right? No, you just move on and you just try something else. And if this block piece doesn't fit, you move it around and you change it. And I think that's what I love so much about just not just playing but being like curious as well.
I want to come in here because
please do.
I agree with you so much, that particularly the expression "what if," that we need to start using that phrase with children as young as possible. What if, or what would happen if? And in my own work, I want to do curious, messy, unpredictable play with very young children, because it sows the seeds for later on, that if everything is conventional play and directed play, they will never ever develop that curious streak. And that's so important.
100%. I agree. Yeah.
So I'm glad you came in there, Sue, because I thought I was going to have to find a way to invite you in, because I'm going to share something with you, Emmanuel, or Captain. Am I going to call you Captain Awesome?
Yes, of course.
That's that you've.
Yes, because everything is fiction. So I think is one of the things, right? Like, because people ask me, right? Like, is it Captain Awesome? Like you're asking me right now, right? And I think it still comes down to play, right? Like literally
Yeah.
for me, I view life as an activity where everything is fiction. Like literally, we wake up and we decide that this, you put a square on the earth and you call it 1 square feet, right? Like there inherently there is no square feet to the earth, but we give it that function, and then suddenly we all believe in this function, in this fiction called a square feet on the ground, right? And I think for me, I just kind of took that and I ran with it, which is like, if everything is fiction, then why can I not be anything that I want to be? And hence why I am the Captain of Awesome.
Absolutely. Now, before we invited you in, and I was telling Sue a little bit about you, she was expressing some of her fears because Sue is a self-proclaimed, and I hope you're all right with me saying this, we didn't discuss it beforehand, Sue. She's a self-proclaimed technophobe, I think she would call herself. Somebody that knows a little about technology, but I think it's a fear of technology. And I was hoping that maybe because she's a fan of play and you're a fan of play, you both think it's really, really important. How do you think she could incorporate play or some forms of play to gently overcome some of her technophobia? Is that a word?
Well, I would say like every playground, right? You have to acknowledge that there are some dangerous activities, right? So even when you're at the playground, right, there are some things that need adult supervision, for example, right? Like you don't just, open up the kids and, just dive all over the cliff and do whatever it is you want, right? We still don't do that, right? So there still is a little bit of constraint, or maybe just not constraint, maybe, we design, or it's a curated experience, right? So I would say in this way with Sue as well, it's understanding, number one, what are some of the kind of what is the kind of curated experience that you want? Because if you just look at it, just from a very open, looking at everything at the same time, of course, it's always scary, right? Think of a child who is, at a playground for a first time, they're a small being in this universe, and then suddenly the world is so much bigger. We don't open them up and say, hey, go to the mall, for example, or go to like a hiking trail, and now you can do whatever it is you want, right? We curate the experience for them, right? So I would say it's about understanding what does a curated experience look like for you. So it's not, you're trying to do AI or you're trying to do any of this, super complex things. Obviously not. So I would say it's understanding like, okay, what kind of curated experience do you want first? And then just, letting curiosity lead you as opposed to fear, which I think this is the courageous part, right? This is the part where you need to be courageous. Like it's all nobody else can give you that. Not even Andy, no matter how much he tries, he cannot give you that. Because I remember he did call me about getting you like some tech help for your recording setup, and the advice I also gave him was like, listen, do not overwhelm her. Do not try to tell her like do this, or you're doing it wrong, or you're not doing it right, because that's never going to work, right? Because most of these things, it has to come from within. And just like how we play, I cannot force you to play. I cannot force you and say you must have fun today, Andy, no matter what. You must have fun. It doesn't work, right? So in many cases, I think it's just creating a safe space for Sue to be able to, know that there's no judgment, right? There is no pressure, right? Like, even if you do not like it, that's okay too, right? Because, I mean, what are we going to do? Like, force you to use technology? Like, we cannot do that, right? So that is okay too. And maybe, if you feel comfortable enough, then, maybe you can just dip your toes a little bit and, experiment in the way you are comfortable with. And, that's where confidence comes when you're playing, right? Like, you try something a little bit and then you get feedback from the world, and then, you kind of, go a little bit deeper, and maybe it doesn't quite work out, you take a step back, but you are definitely a lot farther than where you started from. Yeah.
And Sue is definitely a lot further than when you started off. Even this podcast, for example.
Podcast, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Anything you want to ask Captain Awesome as regards technology and play playing in
Well, I
tech?
think the fear that's always been with me in relation to technology is that fear that everything's just going to disappear into cyberspace. So I'm always trying to copy things a ridiculous number of times just to make sure they don't get lost. So, my storage boxes are very full of repetitive things that I've saved in case they disappear. So
Do you mean sort of printing something off because you're scared it might disappear off your computer or something?
yes, printing something off, but also copying it and saving it more than once.
Okay.
And it's gonna blow your mind, Andy, but
Okay.
even like the most technologically advanced people I know do exactly the same thing. So, for example, one of like the core tenets of backing up, for example, so because when I in the industry I'm in, I have lots of files, I have lots of video files, I have lots of archives and everything. So one of the core rules of archiving is always like it's a 3-2-1, right? So it's like you have three different backup solutions, right? You have two copies of everything, and you have one that is always offsite, right? So it's not in your physical location as well. And
Right. Of
even like
course.
the
Yeah.
most, yeah, right.
Mhm.
So even the most tech savvy of people do exactly the same thing that Sue does, right? Which is why it's always interesting when I hear perspectives like this, because you are literally like on just the opposite ends, but it's still the same thing. And the fears are valid, right? And I'll tell you, I come from Nigeria, where for many times, there were lots of people. I would not say much like Sue. I'll just say much like in general. Like right now, maybe an analogy I can use is the people who are fearful of AI now, right? So growing up in Nigeria, for example, I heard many of the same rhetoric, right? It's gonna steal jobs, it's not safe, it uses way too much resources. I heard all of this growing up in Nigeria when I first got on the internet, right? And one thing they always said back then with the internet is, the internet is forever. It will never forget anything. But if you've been on the internet as long as you have, and you've been on the internet quite a while, you know that there are many things that are no longer on the internet. You just cannot find it anymore. Like many services, they go down and then suddenly all the data is gone. Your data is not secure. They use your data for like marketing and they sell it to all these nefarious actors. So you realize that it's actually not forever. Yeah, sure. Maybe in the periphery of things, you can kind of, your Facebook or, the much bigger services. But even there's this author, Cory Doctorow, where he wrote this book called The Enshittification of Tech, where, tech platforms will purposefully make their platforms worse so you can
Okay.
pay to just get a good enough service, right? So let's say before on Twitter, right, before Elon Musk changed it to X, you had like the check mark, right, which was given to journalists, it was given to notable people, so you could know who to trust. Suddenly now they're going to enshittify it so that anybody can pay for a blue mark. So now you don't know who to trust anymore, right? So this is one of these things where like it's happening all around us. So Sue, you are not paranoid. This is real. Like it's 100% correct, right? And it's a good practice, right? And I think one of the great things about technology, which I choose, I'm very curious about, is not so much so in just the things we lose, but also in the things we gain, right? So, for example, I come from Nigeria. I came from a village, and the only reason why I was able to literally just be able to learn so much was because of the internet, was because of computers, was because of technology. And even right now with the whole AI thing going on, I have like my own personal AI manager that manages everything for me automatically because of the kind of brain that I have. I always have all of these disparate ideas from here, from there, from everywhere. So I have something where I can just synthesize everything and it's all local on my computer. It's not going to any cloud. So many of these things, I think for me, it's just about understanding what do you want to get out of it, right? So again, it's coming back to the internal as opposed to what are you losing from it. It's always about just asking the question like, hey, listen, if you wanted to get something out of this, right, what does it look like, right? So it's not so scary like, oh, you must use technology or you must do this or you stop doing this, right? So I don't think I take that approach with anybody, more so with myself. Rather, it's just asking questions like, hey, Sue, what does technology working for you? What does that look like, right? Like, okay, if there was not a worst case scenario and there was something that you were able to use it for, what would that be? How would that look like? And just small thought experiments. And again, we are playing here. And maybe that leads somewhere, maybe it doesn't. Again, there's no pressure because we are playing, right? There's no outcomes. So there's no KPIs or anything, right? So it's just about just understanding what it is you want out of it. And for me, I think it's just about seeing how, as a kid growing up in Nigeria, where I could, devour any information. I remember back then, before the internet, we had the Microsoft Encarta Encyclopedia on our computers back then. So I would print it out actually physically because we didn't have like internet electricity, right? So I would have to, whenever there was power, I would print out the pages I wanted to read later. And then when I would discover the internet, I would discover Wikipedia. So I would be on the computer for hours just reading different Wikipedia pages. And so I think for me, it was fantastic in just being able to get new information.
Fabulous.
Would you explain the 3, 2, 1 again, please?
So you must always have like 3 copies of your data, right? So maybe it's on your computer, it's on a hard drive somewhere. Maybe it's on a cloud drive somewhere. So maybe it's, in Google Drive or wherever it is, Microsoft, wherever. And there's maybe the third one is on a flash drive, right? So you actually physically have a copy of it as well. So in case anything happens, you lose access to your accounts, Microsoft shuts down, it doesn't matter, you still have a copy of your data. The 2 is you must always have copies of it, right? So whatever it is you're working on. So if you're working on a project, for example, don't always trust that it's just going to be one version you're working on. You might lose that. Your house might burn down, and then what, right? And the last one is always you must have your data offsite. So you must have it not in your physical location. So in case something happens, maybe it's a post office box, or maybe it's, I don't know, somewhere. You must always, so for me, for example, I use a service called Backblaze, where they will periodically back up your data, and it's based in Europe, so they follow all the guidelines and everything, which is why I specifically chose them. And if anything happens to your computer, whatever it is, they will physically mail you a hard drive with all of your data on it. And it's all encrypted. You only have the key to be able to unlock it. Even they cannot unlock it for
Even
you.
they
So if
can't,
you don't have the
right.
key, if you don't have the key, it's lost forever. So it's very, very secure. So if anything happens, you can always just request for them to literally ship you a hard drive. So you don't even have to download anything over the internet. Like, it's all like very safe and secure. Yeah. So that's a very good practice, which is why when Sue told me, I was like, yeah, the most like high-tech people I know, they do exactly what you're doing. Like, they're paranoid about their data. Like even in Norway, I believe they have like an underground data bunker where they record data to like disks, like physical disks, which have way more capacity than like, hard drive or SSDs or whatever you have. Yeah, so it's very good practice actually.
The offsite thing, I think most people, I would suggest most people don't do that, but that's probably one of the most important things, is actually having something offsite. So your most important data, like you said, your house might burn down, you might get flooded or whatever, you might get robbed or something. If you've then got something, a simple, for example, Sue, I could store your stuff in my house and you could store my stuff in your house. That would be a way for us both to have something off-site if anything happened to either of us.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Emmanuel, Captain Orsham, is so you love to play. And it's probably one of the most important parts, I would dare to suggest, of the work that you do. And I think this is the thing for men. I'm trying not to be sexist here, but I think this is something about men. Whenever they get a new product, whether it's a mobile phone, a gaming console, or whatever, is that they don't like reading instructions. They just open the box and they try and work it out themselves. Now, relating that to play, so with you as somebody that's really involved in all the tech stuff, you know a lot about phones, a lot about gaming consoles, and so on and so on. When you get a new product, do you read the instructions or do you dive straight in and start playing with it first?
Well, I would say I maybe probably I'm not a man because I cannot relate to like that general experience because I'm a voracious reader. Like I would read anything. Like growing up, I literally grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I had nothing to do. I was bored out of my mind, and my
Sure.
mom is a doctor, obstetrics gynecology. I would read her obstetrics gynecology books because I was just so bored and I needed something to like read, and I ran out of like my novels or whatever as a kid, right? So I think for me, I'll probably not be in the general population, but the literal reason I have the job I'm doing right now on YouTube is because I read manuals. Like because nobody reads anymore. Like literally, like the videos that like get the most views on my channel, I usually like tips videos, right? How to do this with your phone or how to do this with your laptop. And how did I find out? I literally just like read the manual.
Right.
That's it. And like most people just don't read anymore, like not just manuals but just in general, right? So because
Mm.
of that, I found that just the simple act of just again just going one step deeper, of just finding out, hey, how does this thing really work? And then it's not just about reading, because also like I don't think I am someone who is capable of just only reading and not doing. So I think there's a balance where I read, I experiment, I read back again, I experiment again, I read again, I experiment. So it's always like that. So because of that, it's like even without trying, so even when I get a new product, one thing I always do is I always have like a laptop or a pen or something just to take notes, because the moment I start using it and I start reading the manual and I start playing with it, I before you know it, I already have like 20 tips that I've already written down, because like
Right.
it just because it just comes naturally, right? So I think that's one of the things that is so underestimated. And I think when you say you want to plant that seed very early on, I think that's one thing that is very important, because for me, I know that it was from my mom, because my mom is also, she's a doctor. She reads a lot as well, and I kind of picked that up from her. And I remember from just my early like knowledge sorry early memories of just reading about stuff, like, so you just you don't stop. And for me, even Andy here, when he tells me about the Temiar, he tells me about, I open my TikTok, I see him with his Ma'iga, when he's greeting and everything. And it's just, it goes in, right? And it's like the more I would say when you've built that foundation, it then becomes a whole lot easier to be able to see different things and connect different disparate things that maybe normally you would not be able to see, right? So because I'm used to, just playing around with things, I'm not trying to put a structure on anything yet. I'm just seeing where it goes. Uh, I'm able to then see more, right? And I think even the act of running, because Andy, we ran a lot when you were here in
We
Malaysia.
did. Yeah.
And one of the things we did was, sometimes we did not have like a route. We just, went out on the open road and we just, explored, right? There's a golf course. Why don't we go there, right? There's this road here. Why don't we? And it's like, for many people, like I know one of my friends at the time, Ben, my housemate, he hated that, right? He for him, it's like, okay, if we're running today, where are we running to? Okay, what route are we running?
Yes.
How many kilometers are we running? Okay, what is the pace we're running at? Do we have water or not? Do we have to stop for water? Okay, what is the purpose of this run? Is it a fast run? Is it a so it's like it kills the kind of spontaneity and the joy, and for me just the playful nature of being outside, breathing the good air, because usually we run at night. Now all the cars have gone home, the roads are a lot better, the air is better. You lose all of that just because you're like, am I running like Eliud Kipchoge at the London Marathon? Like, my bro, no, that's not what we are doing. We're not professionals, we're just having fun. So I think it's even something as simple as running, right? Even something as simple as choosing food. And I think for me, that's why I see lots of opportunities for play, not just in the traditional sense, but, when you realize that you can sort of play with everything, then you can play with anything.
You can. Now, Sue, you're a prolific writer, over 50 books published. Emmanuel, you're a prolific reader. I'm a little bit of a writer, and I love reading as well. With my kids as well, I think it's so important to read. We got so many different kinds of books. They're always taking books off the bookshelves that we got at home. But I think in the age of the internet as it is at the moment, there's an awful lot of children that don't read. They are stuck either on a mobile phone that their parents have given them to keep them quiet, or on a gaming console. Uh, so this question is to both of you, really, is how do you think we can encourage our children through maybe various different forms of play to encourage them to read more? How can we get them into reading and not turned off it, which they seem to be a lot, so many of them are?
Well, to give an example, sort of within my own family, because my parents were tended to be a bit lackadaisical about education, several of my siblings actually didn't learn to read until they were much older, 9, 10, or 11. And seeing that happen and how they admit to having suffered. They were even going to adult literacy classes later when they were in their late teens, but they said it never ever made up. And they were very envious of, I mean, I learned to read at a very early age, very early, and was reading stuff way ahead of my years too. So I think early in life, parents, it's not just about feeding and caring for a baby. It's also reading stories, telling the stories, reading a book, encouraging them to read a book. Right from 2 years old, if not before, at least even before that, a baby hears the sound of your voice and the way it modulates and the way it illustrates the story. So I think very early exposure from parents wanting to convey a story, tell a story. That's where I would start.
Okay. Even before birth, maybe, telling the stories to the unborn child.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing in our play teaching. We encourage people, nurses, midwives, whoever, to encourage pregnant women to tell stories to their unborn children.
And Emmanuel, I mean, you mentioned that in Nigeria when you were growing up, that one of the reasons that you started reading a lot is because you were bored. There wasn't anything else to do. Is that the main reason, or did your mum encourage you in any playful ways to read as well?
I think, I mean, looking back retrospectively, it's easy for me to, take a dart, put the bullseye on put the I'm trying to find the analogy here, right? Take a dart, throw it, and then, just put the bullseye and just it hits the
Yeah.
bullseye and boom, bullseye, right? So it's very easy to do that. But I'll say from the perspective of when I was a child, it was not conscious, right? And I think it's just all about access, right? Like, what do you have access to? And I think one of the things you mentioned, like, your kids, they're always pulling books off of the bookshelf because there was a bookshelf in the first place, right? And there were books in the
Exactly.
first
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Right. So there's access there, right? I think that's the first thing. Second thing is, children are just like a reflection of their parents, at least at the early stage. Later when they grow up and they go out into the world, okay, things do change. But from the early stage, you do pick up some of the habits you see around you, some of the vocabulary you hear
Mm-hmm.
around you, and for me specifically, I just saw my mom. My mom, she studied for her exams. She was always learning. She wanted to become a consultant, so she was, reading for, all the certifications she was going to take. She was doing a PhD at the time. So I just saw her reading. So it was like,
Mm.
I want to read like my mom, like I want to do what she's doing. And I think even with parents today, right, like, sure, we all blame the kids and say they have no interest in reading. They do not want to do any of this. They just want to be bored. Brain rotting is what they call it, right? The new term. It's a brain rot, right? But, they just pick up the habits of the adults around them. What are the adults around them doing? Like, the adults around them are not reading. Like, they're not, fostering an environment where this is something that means anything. And I remember when I then went out into the world, into secondary school, people made fun of me, right? Like, why do I talk funny? Why do I use all of these words that I don't understand if what the words are, right? But I read them in a book And later I would mispronounce them because I only read them in a book. So I never actually heard anybody say it right. So people actually made fun of me for that, like for the longest time. Like, yeah, because again, that's not something that was in the greater society, right? And for many people, maybe this will, I've done them in, but for me, I'm quite a stubborn kid. So I was like, you just do not understand the words. But I would say for most kids, it does, and I'm a huge believer in how everything is interconnected. And we cannot look at the kids not reading and not examine that there's just there are no shared spaces anymore, even for reading, right? Like when I was growing up, even in
True, yeah.
Nigeria, there are libraries. You could go to like a library, for example, but now it's like, where are the libraries, right? Like, even are the libraries maintained properly? Have they embraced like the new worlds that we are now? Like, most of those things are not true. Even here in Malaysia as well, it's like that, right? But you go to the malls are never ending entertainment. It's never ending distractions, right? And those things are very glamorous for a young person, right? As opposed to the act of reading that maybe when you are younger and you're not used to it, it's very difficult to get into, right? Especially if you don't have the foundation, and it's just very daunting to try to do this very scary thing for the first time. And I think one of the biggest examples is Kai Senat. He's one of these new age streamers. So I don't get it either, but they just stream everything. Like, literally, he has a camera on, and they call it a streamathon, where he streams for like 10 days at a go.
So like his whole life is
nonstop.
just streaming, is it?
Everything. He would invite all of the actors and all of the musicians, and they'll all come to his house. And so obviously he became really big, especially with like the really young population, right? Like the really young generation. And last week, actually, there was a controversy, and it sounds stupid saying controversy, but he actually now wants to start like his own clothing label. And because of that, he wants to understand how to communicate his ideas. So because he realized that, okay, I actually cannot communicate myself well, he started reading.
Okay.
So what he did was that he started like a kind of private YouTube account where he would upload videos of himself, just, take a book, have his phone by his side, and whenever he's reading, he doesn't understand a word, he would go on his phone, look up look up the meanings, look at how to pronounce it. And this was a controversy because people were making fun of him for that, right? They were like, oh, look at this guy
So
trying to
brave,
read.
though.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the people he talks to are like all the young generations who need to read, right? So I think for me, it was quite a nice thing to see that this guy was being so vulnerable, and he was being so real. Like, when he has every incentive not to do that, right? Like, he's a multimillionaire now. He has all of the street credibility and everything, whatever that means. But yeah, he's just been reading. And now his younger brother, who is also like really young, about 15 years old, has now also started a stream where he's reading. And some other of the younger streamers now have now started streams where they are reading. And, this is like what the new generation needs, right? Something that they see like, oh, wow, this is important, right? And this is something that is not stupid. It's not silly. It's something that we all need. And then they just do it just, for the pure love of the game, as they say. So I think that was a very interesting development. But to answer your question, is just, kids do what the adults around them do. And if the adults don't change anything, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for the kids to do anything different, because they're only going to do what they see.
If they see their parents on the phone all the time, then that's what they're going to want to do.
Yeah.
For sure. But so this guy, what was his name again? The
Kai Senat, Kai, Kai Senat, CENAT. Yeah.
So it's kind of taking long form video to the extreme when you're kind of showcasing your whole life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I love the long form. Short form video, just so much of just scrolling your TikToks. It's got its place, but I think the long form video.
You cannot survive on snacks only.
No,
you need food.
You do, and it's important, I think, that, to be able to have the courage to show your vulnerabilities. And I think it's true of this podcast series, is that the editing we do on it is minimal. So when Sue and I have made mistakes, which we have, I think I've made more than she has, we're just letting it go through. I'm not editing it out, which, maybe a year ago, I might have, oh no, I don't want to be looking like that. Like I don't know this or I don't know that. So I'll edit that bit out. And of course, being a filmmaker, that's very easy to do, very easy to mask your mistakes in video format. But yes, being able to show your vulnerabilities, I think, yeah, and it helps people in terms of their own learning processes as well. And
Yeah, yeah,
it's, I think, one of the most important things about making mistakes is that's where you learn the most things in life.
yeah, yeah. Because mistakes, yeah, sure, there are some that are debilitating, but most, especially when you're much younger, often aren't, but they feel like they are.
Yeah.
So, and it's very paradoxical to be able to understand that the mistakes are not fatal. You kind of need to make them, but then nobody wants to ever make any mistakes. So nobody does anything and nobody tries anything. So nobody kind of knows how not to do things. So yeah, it's, chicken and egg and all that.
Chicken and egg. And talking of chicken and egg, actually, this is nothing to do with chicken and egg. We are coming to the end, I think, coming close to the end of this podcast. So before, I've got one more question for you, Captain Awesome. I'd like to bring in Sue. Is there anything else before we go into the last bit of the pod that you would like to check in with Emmanuel, Sue?
Well, to be very appreciative about opening up the whole area of fear of the internet, fear of disappearing, and it's quite interesting. It's almost it's not just my data, my new book manuscript. It's me. This feeling that I could disappear into cyberspace and just go. Very odd feeling, but as all that you've said has been very, very helpful, Emmanuel. It's given me a lot to think about. So thank you for that.
I love it. You're welcome.
So one of the things we do before we finish our pods is we try and think of an activity, a playful activity that we can suggest to some of our viewers. Maybe they're struggling with an issue, maybe they've got the blues, maybe there's a problem in their life or something like that. Could be anything. And we try and offer out a playful activity that might or might not be able to help people. So I'm going to give Sue a chance to think of what she wants to suggest today. So I'm going to put you right in the deep end because I didn't give you any preparation time.
I love it.
Is there a playful activity that you could suggest that people might like to try if they're struggling with some element of their life at the moment?
Yes, of course. Everything in the universe has led up to this moment. Of course, I'm ready for a question, Andy. And yes, I think the most important one is visualize, right? I think that's one thing that I would always suggest, and it's an activity for some people. It's writing it down, like physically on paper, and it's always just bringing into the light the things that are in darkness. So when things are in darkness, it feels all encompassing, right? It feels like this is all there is to it, right? And it's very suffocating, right? So one of the things like I always like to suggest, and even I do personally, is just exposing it to sunlight, right? So that means that it's either, you're writing it down. For some people, it's writing it down. For some people, it's talking about it. But for the activity part of it, it's just writing it down, right? Like, so what is it? The big fear. Okay, write it down. Okay. And then what is after that? Then write it down. So just go down the line. And I've often found that just the act of, just putting a form to these things that have no fluidity, right? It's very fluid, it's very viscous, right? It kind of just takes up all the whole space. Just being able to just give it a form, right? Like literally just giving it a form sometimes just helps you to be able to see that, oh wait, okay, wait a minute, huh? Like it gives a different perspective, and this is something I would always recommend, always. So get it out of your mental space, get it into physical space. Like we call it transmutation, right? So transmutate it, and it might change, it might not, but we are not married to outcomes. We're just married to trying things.
Brilliant. So
Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking of something really physical. If one's feeling anxious or panicky or things might get out of control, and we can all do it together. And you take your right arm and put it on your left shoulder, and you take your other one and put it on your other one, and give yourself a hug.
Oh,
Like that.
So,
yeah, same.
and the important thing is not just the physical act of the hug, you're actually pressing down on parts of your nervous system.
Of course.
So it's
Oh,
actually sending comforting messages to the whole of your nervous system at the same time.
very nice.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, I think for me, I'm going to draw on something that Captain Awesome mentioned, an activity that both he and I did a lot. And we did it in a playful way, our running. So, we're talking about chemicals. I mean, a lot of times when we might be feeling the blues or, we're feeling down in some way, it's caused by a variety of chemicals, cortisol and adrenaline and so on that are sort of rushing around our body. And the way to get rid of those, one of the best ways that I know anyway, is through physical activity. And just going for a little run, a little playful run, is going to help get rid of, a lot of that stress, a lot of that anxiety, the chemicals that are producing those feelings inside of us. And coming back, it doesn't need to be a long run, but physical activity. I don't believe that we do enough physical activity. And I think in terms of our mental health, if we can find some kind of playful activity, I say running, because that's the easiest thing to do in terms of, you don't need any resources. You don't even need special running shoes. You can run in anything, is something that we all have access to, and is going to make us feel a whole lot better at the end of it. So that would be my suggestion. Captain Awesome, how can people, if they want to watch some of your podcasts, where should they go?
They should go to YouTube and search for Geekception. So GeekCeption. Yeah, Geekception.
Geekception. It's been fabulous having you on here. Thanks ever so much for spending time with us today.
Yes.
Can I
Thank you
remind
for having me.
Well, you absolutely are most welcome. It has been our pleasure, really. For the viewers, please, if you've enjoyed this podcast, give us a like and don't forget to subscribe. You'll really help the algorithm. Let's just build up our subscribe count. We'd love that. And also leave us a comment. What would you like us to talk about in the future? Is there anything that we've said that you disagree with? Yeah, you can disagree with us. We'll come back and we'll answer some of your questions and talk about some of your comments as well. So, yeah, for now, going to say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Okay,
All right,
bye-bye,
bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.